Hello, hello. So I should
Start
start in 3
soon.
seconds. I see it now.
And you're
Hello, hello. Thanks for joining us. We're starting just a minute late. Well, 4 minutes late, but it gave us the opportunity to bring on our panelists one at a time, starting with Caroline. Can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Caroline Cilia, and my pronouns are she, her, and I am a content strategist for SMBX. And I've actually been with the company for almost a year now. And SMBX is a marketplace for the small business bond. A small business bond is like a loan that instead of borrowing funds from a bank, a business borrows them from everyday investors.
Very cool. And I think you have your cat there. Is she still nearby, Bass?
My cat is nearby. She
All
is
right.
right here waiting to be
There we go.
She is very excited.
But before we get to your cat, Elizabeth has joined us.
Hi, everybody.
Love your background. We're just doing intros.
Yeah, my name is Elizabeth Gore. I'm one of the co-founders at Hello Alice, and it is amazing to be with y'all.
And what is Hello Alice?
We are a platform that helps small business owners with their financial health, and specifically, we're a community of over 1 million small business owners that we call the new majority: women, people of color, the LGBTQ+ community, and U.S. veterans. And we're very proud to be now the #1 place where they access capital, whether it's equitable access to loans, credit, grants, and so on. So it's just, I'm a super fan of Start Out. So excited to be with y'all.
Great. And I'm the moderator for our session here. I'm Daryl Silver, he, him, the co-founder of a company called Union that helps companies do far better job in HR and recruiting. Basically, well, the founder of my the head of recruiting and HR at my last company spent a year after he left looking for a new job, and every quarter I talk to him and he says, I want to work at all these companies that have a great mission, but they don't want to invest in HR, they don't want to fix inequality, they don't want to fix any DEI issues that I think are important, and I can just see that it's going to be very frustrating. And after a year of having these discussions with him, I said, why don't you just start this company on your own? It's the story I'm telling the story, so I'm going to take all the credit. I just told him, why don't you start this company on your own, and I'll help you with it. I'll back it a little bit. And a year and a half later, that's exactly what he's doing. He's got clients that turn to him to make sure that their compensation policies are fair, that their hiring processes lead to unbiased outcomes in who you hire. He measures retention as a recruiter because he also handles HR as long-term retention, not just the fee collected. And his company, Union, team of 7 going strong, and we're pretty excited about it. Before that, I spent the last decade in education at a company called Thinkful, and I've been a fan and member of Start Out since a long time ago, since before I could grow a beard, maybe. But thanks to Emma for asking me to join. So our topic today is overcoming fear in an economic downturn. The source of a lot of fear, I think, Caroline and Elizabeth, you would both agree, and Bass, chime in if you want, I'm sure starts with finance. It's a fundamental foundational layer. So Caroline, I think, can you kick us off? I think, what is the #1 piece of advice you'd give to somebody looking to either refinance debt or if you're a small business looking to expand in 2022?
Yeah, I mean, so much has changed in the last, 2.5 years. So I feel like how started their businesses and what their 5-year plan was, if you opened your business in 2018 or 2019, is vastly different from where we are at right now in 2022. And I think it's interesting because SMBX, actually, we listed our first business in February of 2020. So we really have seen global scale right before the pandemic. And you would have thought, oh, wow, what is happening? This is a crazy time to, go into this platform. But actually what we saw was communities that really were coming together. I'm located in Brooklyn, New York, and I was in New York for the entire pandemic in the city. The way that people rallied and came together was amazing. And so the thing that I think about when I think of advice for how people want to build their first brick and mortar and how their goals might have shifted and changed, or they want to refinance debt, is to find your community that believes in you and start there. One of the things that makes our platform special is that we connect those small businesses to everyday investors. And that is how local wealth creation becomes global wealth creation. Your customers become your investors, which then, pays them passive income, which is the income they use to come back and support your business. So for any small business owner, I would say look into those creative ways you can connect with your community to.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, you guys are, both businesses, SMBX and Hello House are pretty well established, but I think Elizabeth, if I remember correctly, you're a little further along, just been around a little longer. Have you guys raised money since the pandemic, or when? I know you're Series B now, but when was the last time when you did that raise?
So we raised, yes, right in the middle of it, 18 months ago. So it was in early 2021. We raised our Series B, and like all of you who have joined us today, it was a very emotional and isolating time. And I don't know that that's all gone away yet. Right. And within that, I think every business owner I know either had to find capital to survive or had to find capital to grow. It was a very interesting time when we all needed access to capital. Say it again?
Sorry, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think what was interesting is Hello Wellness was in the center of gravity as it relates to, we've always advocated for the new majority of small business owners. And those were also the entrepreneurs hit hardest in the pandemic. If you look at people of color, women, the LGBTQ plus community who over-index in care and services and hospitality, we all got hit really hard. And so we were in a position at the time to kind of double down our advocacy for entrepreneurs and small business owners to get more funding to them as soon as possible. Again, whether it was growth or survival. Because of that, we grew extremely fast as a company. And we actually were told at the beginning of the pandemic, cut 30%, lay people off. We don't know what's going to happen. This is by our board and our investors. So we did, which was not necessarily the correct decision, because we then had to grow really fast, raise money, and hire people very quickly. So we raised money in a very odd time when the world was seemingly falling apart, but we were very purposeful. And the interesting thing is we were actually raising philanthropic money for our small business owners while we were raising venture capital for our company. So it was an interesting time, purposeful time, but very hard. And so, but I do think crisis and fear does bring very strong focus. And entrepreneurs are very resilient. And you never waste a crisis, right? You use it to sharpen, get smart, diversify. And that's how I know that, the entrepreneurs coming out the other side of this, or the ones that are launching net new right now, are probably going to be the most talented businesses we've seen in a generation.
It's only the three of us here, and the cat, and maybe my cat comes by. Don't worry, there's nobody else here.
Sleeping dog behind me. He's so old.
Only the five of us. It's nobody else. Is there a story of that moment of we don't know what's going to happen next from the pandemic that you'll never forget from a business perspective? Geez, what are you going to do? What our goals are completely different. The world is shut down. Was there a moment that privately you can share with us that made that
if Caroline's cat isn't going to tell. Well, the
Actually,
funny thing is,
I adopted my cat during the pandemic. So,
well, I was also going to say, I feel like that happens to us as entrepreneurs every quarter, no matter if there's a pandemic or not, right? There's a fundamental shift in the business.
Right.
For us, I'll just say, we just launched our first equitable access to credit program last month with MasterCard. That was supposed to launch last year. And we just saw that our small business owners didn't need it at the time. They needed help resourcing COVID specific resources like PPP and EIDL, and how do I go bankrupt without ruining my credit, and mental health needs. And so we took our entire budget and focus for what was why people invested in us, which was equitable access to credit, and put it into our COVID-19 business center. And it had around 200,000 SMBs a day going through it to get help. And we didn't know if that was going to sink our ship, if it was the right decision. We had to beg forgiveness from some major big partners. And, I'll stand by that decision today, because the trust grew with our small business owners. We grew over 1,000% in that process. And no one was going to apply for a damn credit card in the middle of the pandemic anyways. So it was a tough decision, but and we had to make that decision in 4 days, by the way, which was wild.
What drove it? Why was it only 4 days?
Because we had some groups like the National Chamber of Commerce and a lot of our partners ask us if we could build this navigation tool for COVID resources, and they needed to know right then. I mean, everything was falling apart. And so we just had to make a fast decision, and our board got really involved to help us. And but that's my point. If we could all move that quickly and make smart decisions and not get caught up in our own swirl, I don't know, maybe we could use that kind of momentum in other times.
Yeah, it's sort of remarkable the number of times that you get pushed into a very stressful situation, and your ability to step up or just make a decision that needs to be made, or see the truth that you've been a little bit hiding from, maybe psychologically. When you're forced into it, it actually comes out better. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, I guess is the
yeah. I mean, I think we're all feeling the after effects too. Like that's the rumble that with the Feds, our interest rates are going up. And I think for small business owners, that fear is real, and it should be, because, we're in this moment of economic downturn, or, this recession. Your point, Elizabeth, I think that's when because we, assess the information, we look at all the available options, and then we try to pivot and make the decision we think that is going to fit best. And the best decision that you can make for yourself is to adapt. That's something that we have learned a lot as a company at SMBX. Our interest rates are very, on track with SBA rates. We saw as things were progressing. And we also saw that small businesses want to secure those types of rates as fast as possible. And for us, we really made that commitment to not only, help process, we onboard all of our small business, but also in the process, when you do something like SMBX on our platform, you go to Bank of America and get a loan, but Bank of America isn't going to give you any resources. They're not help you step of the way. And that's something we really pride ourselves on at SBX, is educating all our small business owners, and then educating our investors as well, so that they can see that creation of wealth and passive income, and also understand that you can buy a gift certificate, you can support and eat dinner there, and you can invest. So it's like all of these ways that we can support small businesses. It's not just buying something.
I love the technical assistance, Caroline. It's awesome.
Yeah, it is. It's a big one.
Still looking for that moment, of that existential moment. That sort of like wouldn't share if the audience wasn't just the three of us. But I guess for me, I'm gonna come on my own, and we're gonna get there. You guys gotta open.
I have a personal one from my own life.
Yes.
I mean, I come from like a very traditional Wall Street background. So before I joined SMBX, I actually worked at a $1 billion hedge fund for 5 years, and in that industry, to the point of I had one of the only female bosses that was in the industry. And so when the time came and they had to lay me off because of COVID, I took a beat. I didn't just jump right back into it personally. And I thought to myself, I want to be in this industry, but I want to be more aligned with the mission of the company. And I also want to make a difference, as corny as that sounds. I wanted to, I was working in an industry where I was just making, millionaires and billionaires more money. And I thought, you know what? Expertise, and I have such a passion for really lifting up people. How can I translate that? And when I found SMBX, and from the first interview I did, I thought, oh, these are my people. In my interview with the CEO, Ben Lozano, he kept on referring to the fact that they all come from a place of abundance and that there's more. There's a lot of access, and we're not a company that fear, we're abundance. We're trying to give help to as many people as possible and educate. And I just was shocked because I'd never heard that in my life from a financial perspective. I was so shocked. And so that made a huge impact on me. And I would say most of the team members that I work with that all have the same passion, which is honestly like really enjoy working with all of my colleagues. Yeah. Things happen for a reason. You get laid off sometimes for a good reason.
There you
So
go.
you never know.
Yeah, deciding whether to ask Elizabeth whether she's ever been laid off.
I've been fired. I haven't been laid off. I've been fired.
Tell us about it.
Oh, I was a lab technician. It was like a macro thinking entrepreneur in a lab. It was awful. And they definitely should have fired me. It was terrible at it.
Did you go through did you have that same
No, I was too young to be as thoughtful as Caroline at that point.
So what did you do?
Then I moved on.
Like next day, woke up, moved on.
Next day, it probably was like, where's the next party? I was in my 20s, so it didn't matter.
Yeah. I was laid off once, and it took me like 6 months to really feel like I wasn't going through 5 stages, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I started realizing that I was going through 5 stages of something, it wasn't exactly grief, but it was something, 5 stages of something. I was like, first there was like this elation, and I changed environment, and it was like fantastic, and then it was boredom, and then it was sadness, and then it was what am I going to do, and then it was what's wrong with me. So it's 5 stages of something.
Mm-hmm.
But once I realized it, I said, oh, okay, it's a process. It's a journey. It's because of this event, and I wasn't prepared for it. And then it was not exactly over, but it kind of settled into this thing where it's kind of like a breakup, like a romantic breakup, where you're the person being broken up with. And it's like, it's still kind of in your head a little bit, but actually you feel like you're over it, but it still like occupies, it's a little bit of your identity going forward.
You think about all these business owners who, for absolutely zero fault of their own or lack of planning or anything, had to close their businesses, and what they've emotionally gone through. And most businesses have maybe 3 months of cash in the bank. And if they have 6, it's incredible. And, if you think about almost 2 years of lack of receipts in any business, and the entrepreneurial mindset is to succeed. And we were running data on what is hindering small business owners from moving forward right now. It is still the mental healing of quote failure. But on the flip side of that, we were talking about fear, is the resilience and the understanding of diversifying your cash flow, using technical assistance, like what SMBX offers. You know, I think we're just going to have a very wise next generation, as well as those who have both mentally and with their hearts come out as really strong leaders.
That phrase, the mental healing of failure. What is that? What is it? What do you mean by that?
Well, my co-founder, actually, Carolyn, her first business failed, and she has a great TED Talk. Different, yes. Carolyn Rods, yes.
Mine. Carolyn.
Yes. So Carolyn's she's a Latina immigrant from Bolivia, built her first company, didn't have the resources, the connections, it failed. Her second company, she did have the resources and connections, it succeeded. And she says that she learned more from that first company than the second. And that she came out of it with a totally different mentality of how to run a business, how do you prepare yourself, what's your leadership skills. And her second business really, you know, was aided by that failure. But she still has, I mean, she and I will go through cash flow statements, and I can feel the PTSD in her of, we've always run our company very frugal. And I think a big part of that is her experience of losing a company. So I still see it in her that, like, having failed before, especially as it relates to money, bankruptcy, anything. And I think that, again, mental for an entrepreneur, you know, yes, we fail and iterate in our process, but the ultimate failure around money, I think, is very difficult. It's why couples, it's the number one thing they argue about. It's the number one thing parents and children argue about. It's the number one stress for cash flow is for business owners. You know, it's a very tough topic for your heart and your mind.
Yeah.
That's something that we took into a lot of consideration. So when businesses are on our platform, there's no personal connection to their finances. So if somebody goes through SMBX and we do all of our underwriting and you're there, you're secured or unsecured, but this isn't going to go against your personal. You're not going to lose your home if for some reason you default. And that was something that all of our co-founders were passionate about, that you shouldn't be penalized personally for something that happened within your business. You grow to, you know, that's what we're all here to do.
Yeah. The another thing you mentioned there, Elizabeth, the list of practical moves that you advise in the midst of a moment of failure. I think it's easy to forget. You get so caught up in the weight of it all and the consequence of the change in life trajectory that you foresee because of some setback or because of a real challenge or a real problem or a real failing, whether your own or external forced upon you. You forget that there's a lot of just practical stuff to do to bring finances back in order, to bring expenses back in order, to change, to go to people that, like, if you have rent and you need to pay rent, to go to rent to the landlord and tell them, give them an update and treat people like you. And these moves can be quite effective, but and claw back a sense of control or agency.
Sure.
In the heat of a sort of difficult moment. Leave a pause there in case either you have.
I'll say, you know, back to the original question of the panel of facing fear in a potential economic downturn. I think there's two things to prepare yourself. One is very functional in your business. The other is you personally. So unless you have a 300 plus company, it is still on you. Generally, most of this. But I think from a functional standpoint, what will give you comfort is to try as hard as you can to diversify your cash flow. And that means, you know, lines of credit, operational credit, you know, where are you getting a relationship that's strong with your banker before you need them. And then looking at, I love new alternative ways of diversifying cash flow, like what SMBX provides or what we can help you find at Hello Alice. But also that kind of making sure you spend when you're ready. Your customers are changing every day right now post-pandemic. So test something before you spend big on it. Contract out before you make that next hire. Just be really smart about the way you're spending. And cash flow doesn't just mean money coming in, it's what money's going out. So I think that is critical in the unknown. I think personally, I think cutting yourself some slack as an entrepreneur, knowing you're going into a non-consistent time for planning. So, 5-year plan, 3-year plan, 2-year plan, 1-year plan, quarter to quarter, we're still in this month to month right now. And knowing you have to have the mentality to switch fast and iterate based on, but having that mentality that everything's messy, and maybe talking to a few other entrepreneurs to validate that everything's messy, because getting that sense of control, like you said, Daryl, is very difficult in a time like this. So I think emotionally and mentally preparing yourself and talking to other founders on the uncertain time, but also getting yourself fiscally ready is both super important.
Absolutely. The leads to the next question of that idea of the non-consistent plan, or the plan still in it month to month. To what extent and you guys are, you're in a business that looks at ability to repay either directly, or you're taking that balance, or you're representing it. To what extent do you look at the current data and decide what to do with the business in long-term commitments, let's say in terms of hiring, which is a reasonably long-term commitment, versus rely on your optimism or pessimism about the future and your gut instinct about the future? How do you balance those two right now?
Go ahead, Caroline.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's a great question. I mean, when small businesses come to us, they have to go through a pretty rigorous vetting process with our underwriting team and operations team. So for us, in my point of view, I meet the business after they've gone through that process of underwriting and understanding. And I think that when it comes to the data, the optimism, I think it's like a combination. I'm not in the underwriting team, so I can't officially comment on it in that way. But I do think that your projected growth plays a really important role in it. I mean, ultimately on our platform, investors are also doing their due diligence. We have a bond prospectus that you can go and view, so you can look back through all the years that business has been in operation as an investor, make those critical decisions. And I think that ultimately when it comes to a point of place where how do you base those decisions, personally, I'm an optimist. I come from 2 immigrant families that had to really create their own sense of stability. So I always want to go with leaning into that. But you have to be realistic, right? You can't, you do have to look at the data. I'm lucky that in my job, that's not my responsibility as much. So I feel that what is so great is that we do have a team that really looks through all of those documents. And for a lot of business owners, I hear all of what you're saying, and it's interesting. When I meet a lot of business owners, even when they meet our operations team, sometimes their books need a lot of work. They need help organizing. They need connected to a CPA. They need to, essentially, it's like this cash flow statement and that. And we do a lot of that. We help so much of that process. So, my hope is always to impart some education with every issuer. You said something really interesting, Elizabeth, about, the mental health of these entrepreneurs and how so much whiplash has been happening, and then things change so fast. Now we're at a point where we don't have access to those COVID restrictions anymore. All of that is gone. According to the rest of the world, we should be back on our feet and ready to go for it. But the truth is that's not actually true. we haven't recovered from that moment. And what I like to think is that when I meet a small business owner in the process and helping them with their content marketing, is that I'm also giving them some value. Because maybe they're in a moment where maybe they did have a social media team, maybe they did work with people that they were outsourcing, and maybe now they just couldn't afford it. So when I meet them, I try to impart some of that wisdom so that they get to have value added in all of the process that we work with them, not just raising capital, but also in the sense that they're working with people that really do care and are going to help them. So by the time they're done with their raise on the SMBX platform, their books are all in order. They've learned all this new content strategy. They have maybe even met with the press. They've done TV interviews. Maybe perhaps they've learned new email marketing tactics. So I would say that there's a lot of value that's not captured in data. And we always have to kind of like remember those things too.
Value created by virtue of using the platform.
Yeah. Value created that's like that we don't attribute to a data point per se. You know, not everything can be like pinned down on a spreadsheet to something. So yeah, that's my personal viewpoint on it.
And Caroline, do you have anything to add to that? Is the how do you balance the data versus in a forecast versus the instinct about what's going to happen next? And that when you're in a world of operating, as you say, month to month.
You know, I do have we are a data company, a data science company. However, I do really believe there is a cross section between humanity and data. And I think we're actually missing a lot of that. That's why a lot of people don't trust data lately. I actually think is what are the stories behind the data? What's the nuancing behind the data? I also feel very strongly into segmentation, as well as what is the entire data structure of a person. So if a small business owner is a US veteran who just got back from being deployed and is African American and lives in Detroit, is very different than who's a male, than a female who is a bakery in Houston who's lived there all her life, right? They're going to have different access. They have different circumstances. So I think with data, you have to look at intersectionality and really get behind it at times to make sure that we understand who the person is. I also, Caroline, really agree with you on we provide data-driven resources to small business owners, but they also want to have community. They want to talk with individuals, particularly each other. So I don't know, Daryl, I think you have to have both. You have to have a cross section of humanity and data. I'm a strong believer in data, especially when we can report out. We did an amazing, I'll just a big shout out. We did our second year of our Pride report on the LGBT plus small business community. And we did it with the GLCC, Start Out, Hello Alice, and a few other amazing groups, showing the success rate of small business owners in this community. And if we don't share that success rate of data, I think it makes Caroline's job harder to get would-be underwriters, investors, and so on to say, this is a profitable community. I'm going to be a pure capitalist behind it and get there. Then the humanity side of it is, this is an amazing group of people that are incredibly successful. Look at their stories. So I think, you need the proof points, you need the data, but you also need the humanity. Yeah,
fair. So I should say we're heading to the last 7 minutes and 23 seconds. But I wonder if everyone else has that little timer. So if there's any questions from the 46 folks in the audience, then either type in the chat or I don't know if there's a way to speak up. So type in the chat. That's definitely a way that we'll see them. If there's a way to speak up, then use that. We'll all be surprised to hear your voice and pleasantly surprised. But I think as our last topic, to switch gears a little, both of your teams are significant, and you're in roles where you're going to see across them. Are there team members that have had to take sabbaticals and folks that you've had to communicate that either to leadership or to your manager or to the board, and just because of the stress of the last 2 years, and how's that been received? And do you think that's going to continue? If so, sabbaticals or like extended time, like, okay, you know, you're doing a good job, but I'm feeling very burnt out. I need to take time away, that kind of thing. Does that come up? Maybe not.
I have not noticed that at our company. I've been at SMBX for a year. And one of the things that a lot of, you know, I had never worked for a startup before. This is my first startup, like I said, coming from traditional finance, where, you know, it was a 24/7 environment. And
Right.
when I interviewed at SMBX, everyone made it perfectly clear time and time again that they all wanted us to have work-life balance. You know, all of our co-founders have very rich, full lives, families. A lot of my colleagues also, we all have our own outside interests, and we do a really great job of connecting. You know, we're a fully remote company, which I feel like so many startups and so many companies kind of like pivoted in that direction. For me, I love it, especially as someone who's a content creator and copywriter. I like having silence. I like being with my cat and typing all of my blogs and newsletters that I'm writing for our company. And I really appreciate that, because that also is, you know, not just all located, all the employees aren't just in New York or just in San Francisco. They're all over the country. And for me, I actually really enjoy that. I've visited a lot of our amazing United States, and I think it's interesting to meet with business owners. I love traveling. Anytime I go on a trip, I was just in Nashville for my best friend's wedding, and I met some small business owners, and I was like, hey, I work for this really awesome company, and it's my new tactic whenever I go out and travel. And I find that when that comes from the top, when the co-founders really implement a strong value system for balance, and also have a real understanding of what burnout means, I don't think you see it happen. You know, I like, again, coming from, you know, round the clock Wall Street mentality to this company, where a lot of people did also come from Wall Street, people really rebelled. In fact, they were like, this is not Wall Street. I've heard that many times in meetings, on staff meetings. We are not Wall Street. We are not treating people like this.
Yeah.
So
no, that's fair.
I love that. To me, that was a big deal. And so I think it's made an impact, and we haven't had team members have to like deal with any like fallout from that because of it.
And I would say when I take an honest look at my employees, I think where they're getting burnout and exhausted is the constant need to change and pivot right now. You know, I give that advice to our entrepreneurs and small business owners, but we as a company are constantly iterating right now. Where we used to be because we're a product and engineering, data science, we've got product builds, they're built on sprints, they're very methodical, you know, and we are constantly changing with the needs of the small business owner, because they're constantly changing. And so, okay, inflation, okay, blah, you know, huge hiring problems. We have this, that. And then even our small business owners going, the entirety of them having to go 100% cashless. Like that was an example during COVID where I was like, we got to help. So I think what's been hard is every time I think we have a good, solid prioritization, we 100% absolutely have to iterate and shift, or we are not keeping up with how fast our economy, our small business economy is changing. And I know that I see it in our employee surveys. I actually heard it this morning. It can be really exhausting when I'm an employee, I'm working so hard on this project, and suddenly it's been either deprioritized or I'm being pulled another way. And I know that there is a level of frustration and exhaustion there. And I don't have an answer, Daryl. I'm just being really honest on what I'm hearing right now with our team. And so I'm trying to walk my own talk and figure out how to plan for the unexpected, or what did you say, carve out time for the things that you have no idea are coming. So that's where I get worried about our team is it feels good to finish a project, right? It feels good to say we did that, or we checked the box, or I can see the results of this. And if that's constantly evolving, I think it's hard. And the only message I send back to my team is that's what our small business owners are going through right this second too. So maybe it helps us relate.
I think that's a very honest and good couple of answers. The burden on leadership to over communicate in that time of transition is just much higher. It's like, it was always my lesson. It's the lesson I learned over and over. You can ask Emma about it. But it's change management always requires communication. When you're constantly changing, then it's just that much more difficult. And it's not just, it's sort of building into the process of the company that there will be changes in goals. And it's a part of the journey of making a sustainable business is that there will be change. What's the Carnegie line? To grow is to change, and to grow is to change, and to change. No, to improve is to change, and to change is to I'm butchering it.
I'll look it up. That'll be our homework.
To improve is to change, and to grow is to change often, I think is the quote.
I like it.
Which is to say, you have to go through these experiences in order to become the full you that you are meant to be, or that you can become. And with that, 3 seconds left. I don't know what happens at the end, but
Thank you very much, Caroline, for your wisdom, and Daryl for your leadership. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both. Really enjoyed it. Loved chatting with you all today. So did my cat. She just meowed. And have a great weekend.
It's only Thursday, but that sounds good. Have a great weekend, everybody, as well. When the time comes, or if the time is now, or if you're on a Sunday to Thursday, Sunday to Friday schedule. Is there anything else we need to do, or is that about it? Cool. It says you're off stage. I wonder if that means everyone can't. We're the only ones who can hear you, but. DJ Limpet said that he wants us all to. We're all getting free iPhones in the mail, so look out for those. That's what he just promised. If you didn't hear him, thanks so much.
Thank you.